after several months of a shaky Gaza ceasefire, one thing is absolutely clear, that Hamas has no intention of surrendering their weapons. And owing to this, the IDF is reportedly preparing new battle plans in case Israel decides that only major military operation can fully strip Hamas of its rockets, guns, and most importantly, its tunnels. Remember, under the much celebrated deal brokered by the United States, Hamas was supposed to disarm in stages while Israel pulled its troops back and allowed large-scale rebuilding in Gaza. But Israeli officials now believe Hamas has not followed through the agreed terms, which is why IDF is getting ready for the possibility of going back again, all guns blazing. Though this time, there is another dimension which will perhaps affect Israel's calculus to attack Hamas again, and it's Iran. Well, don't be puzzled, because in this edition of From the News Desk, we will tell you what exactly is IDF's new Gaza plan and how will the Iran threat change how IDF earlier operated and executed its attacks against Hamas. Well, Israeli officials say that Hamas has used the lull to regroup and restore military capabilities in violations of the truce terms, while tightening its grip over the parts of the Strip still under its control. In fact, the Israeli Defense Forces now hold roughly half of Gaza's territory, while some 2 million Palestinians are crammed into the remainder under de facto Hamas rule. As per reports, IDF commanders on the ground report nearly daily attempts by armed operatives and other suspects to probe Israeli line, including among the so-called Yellow Line, the demarcation inside Gaza to which Israel's forces pulled back under the ceasefire. In anticipation of a possible political decision to move, the IDF Southern Command has drawn up a bank of operational plans for a series of new incursions. Owing to this, Defense Minister Israel Katz has publicly vowed that Israel is determined to disarm Hamas and warned that if the group does not comply with the agreed framework, the military will dismantle it and all of its capabilities. Well, officers involved in the planning believe the objective is attainable, but caution that grinding down Hamas's remaining military infrastructure could take years, not months. Now, any renewed offensive is expected to be more intense and more geographically expansive than the operations Gaza has already endured since the war erupted in October 7, 2023. Earlier phases were constrained, at least in theory, by the presence of Israeli hostages in the enclave. But with now all hostages returned, officers on ground say the IDF would have greater operational freedom. Well, troops would also likely enter areas where ground forces have barely set foot during the earlier war, including central Gaza and the coastal stretch of Mawasi, which became a dense refuge zone after earlier evacuations. Well, as of now, IDF continues the laborious destruction of Hamas's tunnel network, a task some describe as endless. In fact, military assessments still put a large share of the tunnels as intact or not yet located, underscoring for Israeli planners how far Gaza remains from full demilitarization. Now, all of this is unfolding against the backdrop of a volatile situation with Iran. With the region on edge, experts warn that any new flare-up between these two countries layered atop with the Gaza conflict risk igniting a much wider war. And Israel continues to view Hamas as a pillar of Tehran's axis of resistance alongside Hezbollah in Lebanon and other Iran-backed groups that have targeted Israel since 2023. In fact, in recent weeks, Israeli leaders have signaled they are prepared to act unilaterally against Iranian-backed threats if they judge that Tehran or its allies cross a so-called red line, even as Western governments, including US, push for de-escalation and renewed diplomacy. And that Iran equation cuts both ways in Gaza debate. On one hand, the perception of a tightening Iranian nose strengthens those in the Israeli security establishment who argue that Hamas must be decisively broken now before it can re-arm under Iranian patronage. And on the other hand, Israel's allies fear that a major new ground assault in Gaza could derail efforts to contain Iran, inflame regional options, and further isolate Jerusalem diplomatically. Well, as of now, it seems Israel is holding its forces along defensive lines inside Gaza, striking selectively when Hamas operatives cross the yellow line, while its generals refine options for a more sweeping campaign. Whether those plans are activated will hinge on calculations made not only in IDF Southern Command and Israeli cabinet, but also in Washington and Tehran.